2, 1.
Okay, so this is lesson 1. I can tell it's lesson 1 because looking up at the top left-hand corner.
I need knights, just knights, to come to the library for a few moments, please. All knights to the library, please.
Okay, so this will be on YouTube for you guys later. No big deal. So I can see I'm at lesson 1, getting started. I can see that there are 19 pages up in the top left. I can go forward. I can go backwards. Okay, so if you wanted to go through, you would be able to go through forward and back, forward and back. On my right-hand side, I see that I've got plenty of action bars over here, and here I've got navigation buttons. Up at the top, I see that there are some various features. A very important thing that you guys need to do is look at the undo. If you do something and you make a mistake, just click the undo. It'll keep like 20 or 30 undos. So if you make a mistake, just click that, and that fixes whatever you have happened to do. We see that I can have favorites, so you guys can select favorite shapes. That's not a big deal. There are places you can go to find pre-made shapes with special things. That's under shape generators. Most of the lessons that we're going to be doing today have to deal with something under the geometric. So I can click under geometric and I see various shapes there that will be common. There's letters, there's numbers, there's symbols. I can get to the same thing by clicking on these pictures up here. I see geometric shapes, holes, letters, numbers, and various symbols. Okay, now most of the time we're going to be working with things on, guess what, the work plane, right? So if you have a mouse, you can scroll your mouse in or out by scrolling up and down. If you don't have a mouse, you can click zoom in or zoom out. I can right click to pan around from side to side, or I can click these buttons, the left and right pan. Now if I wanted to tilt up, I could press the up and down buttons, or I can press and hold right click. So if you have a mouse, you can press and hold right click, and you can look up and down, side to side. Notice how every time I'm moving, I'm not moving from left to right. I'm looking left and right, but I'm not moving left and right. So if I wanted to shift from one side to the other, if you want to shift, you have to press shift. Everyone press shift. And then you can right click and move left and right. So that helps you move from left to right. Now, as you go through these lessons, they're going to give you hints. The hints are in these orange outlines. So if I'm following the lesson, eventually it's going to tell me that I need to drag that shape. It will tell me where to drag it from. It'll probably say, right where it says find the geometric shapes menu. So I would either click on here or click up here. And it says find the box. All you have to do to move from one side to the other is click the shape. Most of you have figured this out, and drag it out. It'll ask you to line up the shapes as best you can. Now, whenever you're following hints, sometimes you'll think you'll have it exactly in place. Like I could have this pretty much like that, and if I'm looking from the side, it looks like, hey, I've got it right where it needs to be. I don't see the orange box anymore. That's why it's important to be able to shift around and get a better idea what's going on. Everyone, do you have your box? If you don't have a box, go ahead and get it. Okay, now let's say you're having a hard time. You have a mouse pad and it's kind of hard to move stuff around. Some of you are going to be in that boat because we don't have mice. So you can select your object by left clicking on it, and then you can press left or right to shift where it is. For some reason my keyboard's locked. Yeah, there we go. So if I press left or right, my mouse isn't going anywhere, but the shape is. Now, let's say I want it to move fast. Down here where it says snap grid, oh, that's what I forgot to say. On the work plane, do you guys see how it's made up of all these little squares? There's larger squares, and then there are smaller squares. The large squares is a 10 by 10 unit. That's going to be 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter. Most of these small squares are in units of 1 millimeter. So on a meter stick, everyone look up here. On a meter stick, how many millimeters are in 1 meter? 1,000. So the work plane that we have here is, I don't know, probably around 30 by 30. So the whole work plane is not going to be any bigger than, say, like this by this. It's about the size of a sheet of paper, but square. So these are pretty small things that we're working with. Just like those little square pixels that I made, those are fairly small. Okay, what are some other things we need to think about? Okay, if I click on the shape, something called the inspector window opens up. Most of you already figured this out too. You can click on it, you can change the color, and it's all hunky-dory. Let's see. Oh, there we go. The 3D modeler sloop. Now, if I'm talking to you and I say that you need to change something along the x-axis or the y-axis or the z-axis, we need to think about the modeler sloop. So everyone, pretend like you're playing cops and robbers. Put up a pop gun, okay? Now your middle finger, make that kind of stick out. So I've got a finger pointed to the front, I've got a thumb pointed up at the top, and I've got a middle finger pointed at my neighbor. So if the gun fired, I'd be shooting 3 different places, right? Now, the middle finger, you never point your middle finger at people, right? So you don't do that. That's the x-axis. You don't do that. Now, the y-axis is on the same, if this was a sheet of paper, it would be on the same sheet of paper as the x-axis. That's the 2 dimensions that we're used to working with, the x and y. Now the z-axis, that's the vertical, that's the up and down. So when you guys need to adjust one of the axes, use the modeler sloop, and that'll help you keep in mind which dimension is which. So x is from left to right, y is forward and back, and z is coming up out of the work plane and down into the work plane. Now when I say that you need to translate something, I'm not asking you to go from English to Spanish. I'm asking you to move the object along one of the axes, x, y, or z. So everyone find the sphere. On page 814, it's going to ask you to bring out the sphere. That's under the geometric shapes. And we can see that the hint is up off of the work plane. Well, when I click on an object, like the sphere, I see that this square box appears. And if I hover over one of the corners, it tells me that it's going to be a 20 by 20. I also see that there is 1, 2, 3, 4 of these little boxes, white boxes, and there's a 5th one up here. By pulling on one of those, I can change the shape. There's another thing up here called a lift handle. It looks like a little cone. That controls my z-axis. My snap grid. If I want to move things in a more fine graduation, I can decrease my snap grid. Oops. So I'm clicking on the little cone lift handle to move things. So now I can see that I need to make this sphere go to the left. So I can press my left button. Yes, Ozil? No. When it says 255 back there. So if I need to make it go left, the easiest thing to do would be to press my left hand button.